Welcome to Mastering in the Box, and in this week's video we are going to take a further look at the Fat Channel XT plugin with specific reference to the extensions and how we can use them to master a song. Hello and welcome back to Mastering in the Box. I am your host Smudge, and this week we're going to take a further look at the Fat Channel XT plugin, which is available in PreSonus Studio 1.5, and we're going to look at some of the extensions that are available and how we can use them in a mastering context. Just before we get into this week's video, I just want to give a big shout out to everyone who's subscribed to the channel so far. Your support really means a lot, so if you haven't subscribed to the channel so far, click that subscribe button below, and don't forget to click that bell and select all so you receive notifications and all of our videos moving forward. So just as a recap, in last week's video we took a basic look at the Fat Channel XT plugin and how we can use this in a mastering context. In this week's video we're going to take a bit of a further look into the plugin itself. If we take a look, the Fat Channel XT is a channel strip style plugin in which we have a high pass filter, a gate, a compressor, an EQ and a limiter. The thing I really like about this plugin is you can change the EQs and the compressors for different modules, and you can put the EQ before the compressor and vice versa. So in addition to these stop parameters we have here, there are these extensions available, and they're accessible by the drop down boxes against the compressor and the equalizer. The extensions are available. These are free for anyone who is a PreSonus Sphere member. These are included as part of your subscription. You will need to download them separately. If you're not a PreSonus Sphere member, you can buy these extensions through the PreSonus website, and I will put a link in the description down below. The thing I really like about these extensions are there are a lot of different options available to you. A lot of them based on hardware emulations, but there are some standard compression and EQ flavors if that's what you want to go for. And these extensions are available for the compression units and also the EQ units as well. There are some great options to suit a lot of different tastes. Okay, so that's enough about the plugin and the basics of the plugin. Let's get into the song itself. So for this week's song we'll be featuring the track Get Down by Nick Graveswell. Nick is a client of mine and he is a top bloke, great performer. He's a local lad from the southeast of England, and if you like your hard rock, your blues rock, this is a great song and a great EP for you to check out. The EP is called Songs to Drink To and is available on all the major streaming platforms. So like a lot of local artists, Nick has had to put a hiatus onto his live performances due to the coronavirus. So I'll be really grateful if you could check out the EP. So it's Songs to Drink To, available on all your major streaming platforms. Check him out on Facebook. I know he's got lots of different bits and bobs available on his Facebook page. So I'll put links in the description down below. And just don't forget, support your local artists, because it will mean a lot to not only them but the whole music industry as a whole. So without further ado, let's take a little listen to the track and we'll get the level meter up. We'll see what the levels are at before we start the mastering, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, see you standing by the bar, cowboy boots and long blonde hair. I know she sees me and I see her. Let's get some drinks and break the ice. Hey, baby.
Okay, so in this particular instance, we're looking at the LUFS meter here. The integrated is coming out around about 11.5. The short term and the momentary are around about between -10 and -12. So in this particular instance, we don't really need to do anything with the overall level. We do need to look at the true peak. The clipping meter is going off, so there's going to be some peaking issues that we need to take control of and actually make sure that the overall track doesn't clip. So we'll probably just put a limiter on just to take those peaks off, and then we'll just go straight into the fat channel and we'll start processing from there. So just to save a bit of time, I've gone ahead and I've put a limiter in and just applied a basic bit of processing. With the limiter, there's no gain, there's no threshold. The ceiling is at minus 2.3, and the reason being is the true peak was still coming in around about, it was coming in minus 0.2, so it's actually coming in really quite hot even though we're applying no gain and no threshold. The attack is slow and the release is very quick at 2.22 milliseconds. It's just there to control the true peaks. Very little gain reduction. You'll see it says minus 2.64 dB there, but that is so it's at the loudest points. If I play this little section here, you'll see that there's no gain reduction in this area from the limiter. So it's very sporadic, just catching those very high peaks and just giving it overall that more rounded sound. Now, just to let you know, in this particular scenario, there could be a case for using a clipper instead of a limiter. I didn't want to go down the clipper route because this series is all about mastering in Studio 1.5, so I want to use stock plugins, and in Studio 1.5 there isn't a clipper as far as I'm aware. But if you do have a clipper, you could try the clipper in a scenario like this because you may have a slightly better result. So I've got the Fat Channel XT plugins open here. I've loaded up two versions of the same plugin. They are both on the insert of the track. And on the left hand side we have the Brick Comp loaded, and on the right hand side we have the Tube CB compressor loaded. These two plugins they're both great options, but both give you different sounds. I've tried to emulate them so they are both giving around 3 dB's worth of compression. I would not normally apply this amount of compression with this track because I know that limiter is applying compression as well, but what I just wanted to do is give you an idea as to how the sound is influenced by these two different modules. They're both emulating hardware units, but they both have different sounds. Okay, so let's have a quick look at the Brick Comp first. We've got the threshold up the middle, ratio of 2:1. We've got the attack all the way to the right and the release all the way to the left. The makeup is just applying, again, about 3 dB's worth of makeup just to offset the gain reduction. I'm not applying any of the key filter, so the key filter is effectively going to not apply compression below a certain threshold. I'm not going to apply that in this instance. On the Tube CB compressor, I've got the gain about 2-3 dB's again. Once again, it's just applying the makeup gain of the amount we're taking off. Threshold is very moderately applied there. Ratio of 2:1. We've got a relatively slow attack. We've got a release up the middle, and the attack release select is on manual and no key filter being applied again. So I'm just going to play the track through. We'll play it without the compressors first. I'll then apply the Brick Comp, then I'll apply the Tube CB, and we can just compare how both of these different modules sound.
Yeah, I see you standing by the bar, cowboy boots and long blonde hair. I know she sees me and I see her. Let's get some drinks and break the ice. Hey baby, let's get down tonight. Take each other.
Okay, so that was the Brick Comp. Now let's take a listen to the Tube CB. So what's going on in this particular instance? To my ear, the Brick Comp is very subtle. It's applying a transparent amount of compression in this particular instance. So I know it's compressing. I can hear it's compressing, but it's not making anything really jump out. Whereas the Tube CB in this particular instance, to me, it gives more warmth, it feels more rounded, the low end feels more present, the vocals appear to have more punch. So this is how you can get two different sounds from two different hardware units in this particular Fat Channel XT plugin. For my ear, I prefer the Tube CB, so for the rest of the track I will use the Tube CB moving forward. Okay, so let's take a look at the EQs, and in this particular scenario I've chosen two EQs to try and get a good comparison between the two. So I've chosen two separate EQs that have three bands that are similar. So on the left hand channel we have the Alpine 550 EQ, on the right hand side we have the Vintage EQ. In both scenarios we have the tube compressor with matched settings, and I've also backed off the gain on both plugins because I've used boosts on the EQ, and that was actually just putting too much signal into the limiter and applying too much compression. On the left hand side we have 100 Hz increase of 2 dBs on the low frequency. I wanted to bring out some of the guitars, so we've got a 1.5k increase of 2 dBs, and we've got the high frequency, it's a 2 dB gain at 12.5k, and it's a high shelf. On the Vintage EQ, very similar, so there's a 2 dB gain on the low frequency at 110 Hz, and the low mid frequency I've chosen 1.6k 2 dB increase. And then on the high frequency, once again, it's a shelf of 2 dBs. So they are very similar settings. So let's take a listen to the track again. I'll play it without the plugins engaged. I'll then put the left hand channel with the Alpine EQ. I'll then go into the right hand channel and put the Vintage EQ so we can get an idea of the sounds. So let's take a listen.
By the bar, cowboy boots and long blonde hair. I know she sees me and I see her. Let's get some drinks and break the ice. Hey baby, let's get down tonight. Take each other to paradise.
Okay, so now let's take a listen to the Vintage EQ.
But it's shaking till the morning light. Hey baby, let's get down tonight. She knows I want her and she wants me. We dance together 'cause the music's right. Turn it up, make some magic tonight. Hey baby, let's get down tonight.
So it's quite an interesting comparison in this particular example. They're both relatively transparent. They're not adding too much flavour. If anything, I think the Alpine 550 is probably a little bit more rounded. The Vintage is probably a little bit more subtle in this particular scenario. I like the way that the 100 Hz, the 2 dB boost was bringing out the bass guitar. I also slightly preferred the mid frequency on the Alpine as well. I think I probably preferred the high frequency on the Vintage. This is probably because I don't know where the actual frequency is on the high frequency shelf on the Vintage EQ. So whereas on the Alpine we can set it, and then I've set it to 12.5k, there's no particular bands to set that on the Vintage EQ. But overall I preferred the sound of the Alpine. This is where it can get a little bit more interesting, because with mastering, when you make adjustments, it's normally a bit of give and take. I think the Alpine is doing some good things, but I think it also needs a little bit more after EQ. So in this particular circumstance, what I'll probably then do is add another EQ after the Alpine, just to add some extra little details. We've added some increases I'll probably take away in certain areas just to make a bit more of an overall sound. So what I'm probably going to do now is just add a little bit more EQ after the Fat Channel just to round off the sound a bit. And here we are, I've just applied some final details to the actual processing. I've brought the Pro EQ in after the Fat Channel. I've just done two small moves. There is a 1.04 dB increase at 206 Hz. The reason being is I just wanted to bring just a little bit more roundedness to the low end. So we'd applied some details to 100 Hz, but where it was boosting 2 dB, I just felt it was lacking just around that low end of the guitar into the bass frequencies. So I just wanted to apply just a small increase in that area. But I've also taken away some at around 3666 Hz. It's just some of that low end mud. It's a 1.68 dB reduction with quite a wide Q. In addition to this, where we'd applied the high frequency shelf on the Alpine, I just wanted to tame some of the high end, some of the sibilant areas. So what I've also done is brought into the multiband dynamics. I have bypassed most of the frequencies. I've just put the high frequency 1.5 to 1 ratio, and we are just literally applying the compression at 5.91k. It's acting very much like a de-esser, just taming the dynamics of the high end only. So let's take a listen. I'm going to bypass all of the plugins, we'll then put all the plugins in, and then we'll just take a listen to see what the final adjustments are doing.
I see you standing by the bar, cowboy boots and long blonde hair. I know she sees me and I see her. Let's get some drinks and break the ice. Hey baby, let's get down tonight. Take each other to paradise. Body shaking till the morning light. Hey baby, let's get down tonight. She knows I want.
So there we have it. So in this particular instance, we just applied some basic moves there. It's just given some more roundness to some of the elements. So the kick has a bit more definition, the bass has a bit more definition. We've taken out some of that mud from the guitars. The vocal is a little bit more present, which is a combination of some of the EQ, but also the compression. The tube compressor just really brings out the vocal, and we've just applied some high-end adjustments there as well. So we've just a little boost on the shelf, and we're just taming that with the multi-band dynamics as well. So there we are. That is the way that I've used the Fat Channel XT plugin in this particular instance. Just using a few basic moves. We used the tube compressor, the Alpine 550 EQ, and then we've just added a little bit further processing with the Pro EQ and the multiband dynamics. So there we are. That is how we can use the Fat Channel XT to help us with our mastering. I think it's a super versatile plugin. There are lots of different modules to choose from, all emulating different bits of hardware units. It's super versatile, and the thing I really like about it is it's minimalist in its uses. So what I mean is, with the EQ for example, realistically you've only got 3 different moves you can make. The compressor is super simple to use, and then you can just add bits to it. So if you want to add some more final enhancements, you can use the Pro EQ just to bolster up the EQ moves. Or what would also be good is just to layer different elements of the Fat Channel XT. So you could use this as your main, and then add another instance of Fat Channel XT afterwards, bypassing the compression, and just apply a different EQ. So you could use the Baxendale EQ as an example to apply your filters, and then use something like the Alpine as well, just for some more strategic EQ moves as well. And then just use your multi-band dynamics as and when you need it, just to tame certain areas. So I hope you found this video useful. These are great plugins. I do love Studio One, and I hope this gives you some ideas on how you can use some of these techniques in your mastering moving forward. Once again, if you like this content, please don't forget to subscribe by clicking the subscribe button below, and don't forget to click the bell and select all so you're notified of our videos moving forward. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like the video, give it a thumbs down. And if you use the Fat Channel XT in any of your masters, please let me know in the comments down below, because I'll be really keen to know how you're using them. I hope you found this video useful, and all that's left for me to say is I hope you keep safe and well, and I'll see you in the next video very soon.